We have been blessed with an amazing little boy by the name of River Alexander, who was born on December 18th, 2016. He is our rainbow baby, which means that he was a baby that was born after a loss, and we are just so thankful that he's here and he's healthy. So we weren't actually able to record a whole lot of my laboring because the hospital that I gave birth at actually does not allow any filming. Mostly I'm going to be telling you guys about it, so here we go. Hey guys, it is Sunday, December 18th, 2016, and we are headed to the hospital in Pensacola to have our baby. We're being induced today. It's been a really long road to get here, and I'm still kind of like, I don't know what the word is. Like, I'm still kind of like in shock that this is like actually happening and he's like actually coming. It's just been such a long road to get here, and you know, he was a little twinkle in our eye that we started thinking about like years ago, and it's just taken this long to finally get to this point, and like now we're at the point where we're actually gonna meet him, and I'm excited and nervous, and I didn't sleep very well last night. I just was waking up and like thinking about all the things that happen when you're in labor. And I've done it before, but never like this where you go in and you get induced. So I'm nervous and excited and anxious, and yeah, so wish me luck. Super early. They actually didn't have any rooms available, so we had to go into this triage area, just pretty much wait there until they told us they were ready for us. Originally I didn't want to be induced, but because we were high risk and I was terrified of losing my child, we decided to just go ahead and take the perinatologist's suggestion. He had suggested that we get induced at 38 weeks, so that's exactly what we did. So when we finally got sent to labor and delivery, had my IV going and everything, they actually started the induction sometime around 10 o'clock. At that point, they just started me on the Pitocin, and I was getting some fluids, and I didn't really feel a whole lot going on. I was getting some really teeny tiny contractions, and every so often they would come in and they would just kind of crank it up a little bit. And so that's pretty much how the day started. It's very easy, very simple. It was rainy looking outside. Just kind of relaxing, listening to some music. I put some essential oils were going. I had my lavender. By the time it was about lunchtime or so, I was starting to get a little bit more uncomfortable. I was kind of walking around the room a little bit. I wasn't allowed to go out in the hallways because I was high risk and I had to be hooked up to 2 different machines, and it was like one was over here and one was over here, and I couldn't, like, I could only stay within like this 3-foot radius. It was annoying because I want to be moving. When I'm in labor, like I want to move a lot, but because I was high risk and I needed to be monitored the entire time, I couldn't really move very much, which was a little bit frustrating, but I mean, there wasn't really a huge choice on that. So I used a birthing ball. I kind of like sat on it and stuff like that, bounced a little bit. I sat in a chair. In between contractions, I was just moving from side to side. My husband was like amazing. He was like putting pressure on my lower back and all this stuff. Sometime afternoon, my husband went and grabbed some lunch downstairs and like scarfed down some Wendy's. I know he got Wendy's because he told me. And he came back up, and I was starting to get in really intense pain. So strange because my contractions felt different than they did when I was in labor with Jackson. When I was in labor with Jackson, my contractions were all in my belly. It felt like a tightening, like this, and it kind of felt like a menstrual cramp, like amped up, right? That's what it felt like to me with Jackson. This time around, every time I had a contraction, it felt like something was ramming my tailbone. Like it felt like the most intense pain in my bone, you guys. In my bone. It hurt. And then people will say, oh yeah, back labor. And I'm like, no, it was not back labor. It was tailbone labor. If anybody has ever been through that, you probably know what I'm talking about. It was not back labor. I felt that before. I had a little bit of that with Jackson. It was not right here, contractions. I could not feel them like that right here. It was intense pain in my tailbone. And I thought it was so strange. And I kept telling the nurses like, oh man, this pain in my tailbone. But I was trying so stinking hard to have this baby without medication. And it got to the point where, I mean, I was in just such immense pain in my tailbone. Every contraction, it was getting worse and worse and worse. Just like a normal labor, except that mine was straight into my tailbone. Doctor came in, it was probably about 2 or 3 o'clock, something like that. And she was like, I'm gonna break your water. And so here I am in these stirrups with my legs all up in the air, and she goes to break my water. So apparently my body just wasn't quite there yet. I probably would have held him for 2 more weeks. And my bag of water was just so high up that when she went to go break it, they had to literally push on my belly, push my belly down, push River down in order for her to reach my bag of water to break it. And it was so intense. It hurt both directions. It hurt, the pushing on my belly hurt, and also the pushing that she did down there trying to like break my water. They were doing this and I was crying because it was so painful. And of course my husband's like holding my hand like, it's okay, it's okay. He was amazing. But I could not believe how much that hurt, because with Jackson, it was like, and then goosh, water everywhere. And this time it was like, let's just torture you for about 10 minutes and then there's gonna be this little trickle coming out. And so that's what happened. That was over, my water was broke, they cranked up my Pitocin, and I think at this point I was like, you guys, I was like 3 centimeters or something. I had one nurse in the beginning of the day, and then like night shift kind of rolled around and I got a new nurse. And when the new nurse came in, I was telling her, she was like, well, how's everything going? You know, tell me what's going on, tell me blah, blah, blah. And I was telling her how my contractions were so intense and they were in my tailbone. And right before that nurse came in, I had asked to try some of the pain medication that was like a narcotic. And so I tried some of that, and you guys, it did not even touch it. I mean, so at this point I was just like, whatever, give me the epidural. I'm only at like 3 centimeters and I feel like, I mean, it was intense. I was crying, and I was really scared to get the epidural because with Jackson, I got the epidural and it didn't work at all. And so I was just kind of scared that it wasn't gonna work again, and I didn't really want a needle stuck in me. And, you know, I knew that once I got it, I wasn't gonna be able to walk around and all this stuff. And I was just nervous about it. anesthesiologist comes in and I am in intense pain and I'm crying and all this stuff, and I'm really, really nervous about this epidural. I tell you guys, I was not nervous at all my first time I was in labor. Like, I wasn't nervous at all. This time I was extremely nervous because of different things that had went wrong the first time, and so I was terrified. And so I'm sitting here and she's like, okay, now sit with your legs crossed, and like had me sit on the bed with my legs crossed, you know, like crisscross applesauce style. And she's like, lean forward, like you have really poor posture. And so I do this thing. And I'm like, you're gonna tell me when you do this, right? You're gonna tell me, right? Because I'm like mentally not ready for this, right? I give myself shots every single day, but I could not deal with her like sticking something in my back, because the first time I flinched with Jackson when I was pregnant with him, when I was in labor, I flinched, and that might have been why my epidural did not work. I don't know. And I was worried that that was gonna happen again. And I told her that. So she knew. And she was like, okay, well, this is just the numbing medication, okay? And I was like, okay. And then she was like, okay, here's some more numbing medication. And she just stuck the epidural right in my back. Like, she tricked me. And I was like sitting here like, oh my gosh, did you just do it? Did you just do it? And she didn't say anything. I was just staying like perfectly still like this. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was freaking out. I wasn't even like holding on to anybody. I was just sitting there, right? And she was like, yep, it's all done. And that was it.
Hey, so it is about 6:40 at night now. Baby River is still comfortable. I'm 8 centimeters, and obviously I've had an epidural by now because it was intense, and so I'm feeling much better right now, and I now know what an epidural feels like because I had an epidural with Jackson, but it didn't work, and it was nothing like this. So I can't feel the pain. I can just feel the contractions, and I look crazy. Sorry guys, I've been crying and stuff. So we're just waiting right now. I should be pretty close to delivery, and we'll get to meet Baby River.
It didn't work like that the first time. So it was amazing. I was not in pain. I could still kind of feel the contractions, but I wasn't in pain, which was great. I couldn't really sleep like through my contractions or anything, but I was definitely not stressed out and like in pain. So that was awesome. So she was switching me between these different positions on this peanut ball, and then they were putting me in this like sitting upright type of position. So at one point while they were changing me between one position to another, they actually turned me onto my right side with a peanut ball in between my legs because I couldn't move at all. They had to help me move from one side to the other. And at that point, something really scary happened, and my baby's heart rate began to drop very fast. It went from being like normal to being extremely low, and it was really scary. And what they did was immediately flip me back over and started pushing on my belly to try to get him to kind of change positions just a little bit. And then I was really worried, and they were like, just continue to breathe, or, you know, like tell me to calm down or whatever. And then once they got his heart rate back to being where it needed to be, she was able to explain to me that it's probably that he was on the cord, or he had like clamped the cord just a little bit some way or another when I was in that position. So she was like, let's not go in that position again. So we didn't during the rest of my labor. I didn't go on my right side. I only went on my left side. And and that didn't happen again, thank goodness. That was really scary when his heart rate went down, and I'm just glad that it didn't happen again. But it was kind of a hint to something else that was going to happen later. So I'm feeling great. I got my epidural. They're doing these positions, like they're switching me and then they're going away. And then I remember at one point they were like, yeah, we'll be back in just a few hours to check your blood sugar, because I had gestational diabetes during pregnancy. And so during labor, you're not allowed to eat, but there's actually a little bit of sugar in my drip, so that my sugar doesn't go too low. It's just at like a moderate level, basically. So anyways, they were always coming back. I think it was like every 4 hours to check my blood sugar or something like that. So I was due for a check around, I think it was around 10 o'clock at night. So they came in and checked me like some point around like 8 o'clock, and I was around 8 centimeters. I was between 8 and 9 centimeters at like 8 o'clock at night. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna happen so fast now. I'm gonna have this baby, because with Jackson, once I hit 9 centimeters, I was pushing and all this stuff. Well, this time they were like, oh no, we'll see you at 10 o'clock. We'll do another blood sugar test. And I was like, okay, we'll see you at 10 o'clock. Yeah, we'll see you at 10 o'clock. So anyways, I can't feel anything, you guys. They got me in this queen's throne position, and I'm just sitting there, la la la. And time passes. It's like 9 o'clock now, and I'm like really uncomfortable. Not like contraction uncomfortable, but like my legs and my butt and like pretty much everywhere that the epidural was, I was super uncomfortable. Like it just felt like this weird sensation, and I can't really describe it other than I was uncomfortable. So I had my husband come over and he was like repositioning me. I was also like super starving at this point, which is hilarious because with Jackson I wasn't hungry at all, and this time I was just like, I'm hungry, like give me some food. And I just wanted a cracker, and I was telling my husband, I was like, please just give me a cracker, like a saltine cracker would be great. Like, can you buzz the nurse? And he was just reminding me, he was like, you know, they're gonna be in here at 10 to do your blood sugar. We'll ask them then, it's okay. And so, you know, I'm still sitting up in this upright position. I'm still uncomfortable. A little more time passes, and by this point it's like 9:50, and I could not wait until 10 o'clock. I was so uncomfortable, you guys, and I was hungry, and I just wanted a cracker. So I was like, so he goes out to the nurse's station, and he's like, excuse me, ma'am, my wife is uncomfortable. I know she's supposed to have her blood sugar taken soon. Can you guys come check on her, whatever. So they lean me back, turn me on my side, and they're like, have you done the stirrups yet? And I'm like, stirrups. And they're like, let's just put your leg up in the stirrup. So like basically I was on my side and they were gonna put my leg up into the stirrup. Well, of course I like don't have anything on down there. And as the second that they put my leg up in the stirrup, they're like, oh, there's the head. And so when they saw his head, they told my husband, they said, well, can you push that button on the wall right there? Can you just push that button for us? And the nurse in my room at the time was just like, hey, can you call the doctor? And so they were calling my doctor, who was not at the hospital at the time, because hello, it was like 10 o'clock at night. My doctor wasn't there, you know? So they called my doctor. I was at the point where pretty much I was ready to push. I wasn't in pain necessarily, but I had been in labor all day, and so I was ready to have my baby. You know what I'm saying? And he was right there, and so it was time to push, even though I didn't really have an urge to push because I could not feel anything, you guys. Nothing. I couldn't feel anything. So they put my legs up in the stirrups, and my doctor said she would be on her way. Her estimated arrival was actually 20 minutes from that time that they called her, which was at exactly 10 o'clock. So she was scheduled to get there at 10:20. So at this point, my legs are up in the stirrups, and the nurse is like, okay, so it took you 2 to 3 hours of pushing for your first, so we're gonna go ahead and do a practice push. Because she's thinking it's gonna take the doctor 20 minutes to get here anyways, let's go ahead and get this thing rolling. I'm pretty sure that's what she was thinking. But at this point, there were actually no doctors on the floor. There was only nurses. And she told me to do a practice push. And my practice push apparently was just amazing. And so she was like, no more pushing for you. You're gonna have this kid in like 2 more pushes. And I was like, what? Like, no way. I have to push a whole bunch to get my babies out. You know, that's what you think because you've been through it before. But really, the truth is, they're not all the same, and neither is the labor. So, oh my goodness. So I'm sitting here and she realizes that my baby's gonna come very fast. So they call my doctor back and they're like, hey, so at this point, maybe like 5 minutes has passed. So it's like 10:05. And they're like, hey, are you gonna be here soon? Cause she's like gonna have this baby, right? And the doctor's like, pretty much just need to hold off just a few minutes. I will be there. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I start to get nervous at this point and I'm shaking. I don't know if you guys have ever had like the epidural shakes. I think it's actually like part nerves and part the medication. And I'm shaking so bad, like I can barely like breathe, like function, and I'm getting like really nervous and like hyperventilating type stuff. And they're like, calm down, bite your tongue. And so we start to calm down and I'm relaxing and stuff and not pushing. I'm having all these contractions that are super close together because at this point I should be pushing and I'm not pushing. So when I'm having these contractions, I'm trying to like joke around like, haha. By this point, there's like 12 nurses in my room. There's no doctors on the floor. So they called this doctor who was like, I don't know what they call him, but maybe it's just like somebody who is an on-call doctor that's just at the hospital, but they're not really working right then, but they're there just in case somebody comes in and like they're popping out a baby. So I don't really know the technical term for this guy, but they're like, oh, you know, let's bring this guy in or whatever. So they're paging him and he's like not coming. And by this point it's like 10:15. Okay, about 15 minutes of my child being right there, his head right there, but me not pushing through my contractions, just sitting there with my legs up. And this man walks in. There's already like 12 nurses in here, and then my husband's standing right next to me, obviously. And this man walks in and I'm like, thank God a doctor's here. I was like, I can like push now. And he does not even look at me. He says, who's in charge here? Like, you know, who's the nurse for this room or whatever. And, you know, my nurse, who is right there at my legs like this, like she's not gonna let anything happen to me or my baby. She's just hanging out right there in between my legs, all awkward like. And she's like, I am, and you know, the doctor is en route and blah blah blah, and she's very professional. And this other doctor says, why is she up in stirrups? Like scolding my nurse or scolding the nurses. And like, you guys, I am right here with my legs up and there's a baby coming out of my vajayjay. And the guy was being so rude to me and my husband and my nurse, and frankly, all of the nurses in there. And I don't remember exactly what was said, but it was extremely unprofessional, and he could have like brought somebody out of the room, spoke to them, asked them nicely for me not to be up in stirrups, but he didn't. Look over at my husband, which if you guys know my husband, at this point, he's got this look on his face like he wants to punch somebody. So this on-call doctor is trying to tell us that we need to get my legs out of the stirrups, and we had already been sitting like that for 15 minutes. I wasn't pushing my kid out. Nobody was in distress. Nothing was happening. He had just walked in. He did not know what was going on at all. All he knew is that my doctor wasn't there. And so we were all just kind of on edge at this point because he just walked in, and we were in a good mood, you guys. We were laughing, and then he walked in and he was all grumpy gills and he told me to put my legs down. And here I am, hormonal, in labor with a kid literally coming out of my you-know-what. And I just told the guy, no, I'm the patient, and I said no. And you know what happened? He left out of my room. And then apparently he was upset at the nurses or something. No matter what, it was just really, really unprofessional and rude. And we ended up complaining about it later because it was just really unprofessional. Sorry guys, I keep getting interrupted by my children, but I'm gonna finish this story, I promise. So now you guys, it is like 10:19 and look who shows up, but it's my amazing doctor who said she would be there in 20 minutes and she got there exactly at like the 19-minute mark. Amazing. And I was like, oh, thank goodness you're here. And so she was just very calm and she washed her hands and she put her gloves on. She got into her position and she told me to push, and I pushed, and I think I might have pushed like during 2 different contractions. And during that second one, she told me that his head was out and that he had the cord wrapped around his neck. And it was a really scary moment for us. We're already like on edge, we're scared, and yeah, we were just wanted our baby to be here and be safe. But she was so very sweet and professional and kind with her words. She was like, okay guys, he's got his cord wrapped around his neck, so we're not going to be able to let the cord pulse like you wanted to, so I'm going to have to cut his cord. And we're like, cut it! You know, I'm having a really hard time remembering exactly when she cut the cord, but I know that once the baby came out and she was actually able to see that the baby had the cord wrapped completely around his neck, around his body, and around his arm. So it was actually like all tangled up all around his body. Seeing River for the first time was so different than seeing Jackson for the first time. The main thing that I can remember very vividly about Jackson being born is that he came out and he was like this perfectly clean, fat, pink baby. And when River came out, he was purple, and the reason why he looked so different was because he was being basically like deprived of oxygen for a little bit there, because he was purple. His cord had been all tangled up all around him as I was pushing him out. He came out and he had the cutest cry ever, and I know a lot of moms probably say the same thing, but it was like this tiny little cry. And at this point there was a dozen nurses in my room and my doctor, and he let this little cry out, and it was like, and it was just this tiny little cry, and everyone in the room goes, aww, including me and my husband. It was just so cute. And then so they just placed him on my chest, and I got to see his beautiful little face as they were like wiping him clean and everything. And as soon as they finished like sewing me up, I was able to nurse him, and he nursed for an hour straight. He was just, from the very beginning, he loves to eat. He's a chunky baby. And so he ate literally for an hour straight. It was wonderful. It was just really nice time with just me and him and my husband in the room, and it was perfect. I really liked that moment. And they did his weight and his measurements, and they checked his blood sugar. Because I had gestational diabetes, they had to check his blood sugar for I think 24 hours after birth. And we passed all of those tests with flying colors because he was a champion nurser, even though he has a horrible latch, guys. This baby has a horrible latch because he has tongue tie and lip tie, and it's extremely painful. But I was able to nurse him. He was still hungry, and I still fed him even through the pain and the bad latch. So we were able to leave the hospital in like, I think we were only there for not even 48 hours. It was perfect. It was awesome. And it was absolutely a best case scenario type thing. While I was in labor, I was very emotional because I knew that my husband was going to be leaving for Afghanistan very shortly after I had my child. So it was very bittersweet because I really wanted my child to be here and be safe. But I also really wanted my husband not to leave and go to Afghanistan. So it was just really bittersweet, and you know, all the emotions and everything just coming up, I was crying a lot during labor, and it was really emotional, to say the least. But other than that, it was by far a best case scenario situation. It was amazing. I don't want to say it was perfect, but it was a pretty stinking good situation. Like, we are just so incredibly blessed to have River in our lives, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a couple little clips of him so that you can meet him. He is a precious, precious gift from God, and we are so thankful to have him in our lives. I hope you guys like this story. Sorry it's so long-winded. You know how I am. I talk a lot, so I love you guys. He's been praying for his baby for a long time, long time, probably longer than he can remember. When he was 2 years old, he started saying prayers at night, and he would pray for a baby brother or a baby sister when he was 2 years old. So we've been praying for this baby for a long time.
I was 2 years old. I prayed. I get a baby girl. But I'm not. And I get to 4 years old. Now I can say it's a boy.
You're right. And so now that he's 4 years old, he has a baby brother. We just had to ask God for a little bit longer than we thought we were going to, but he's here now, right?
Yeah.
And he's so special.